Governor Romney, would it be worth going to war to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon?
Well, let's start back from there, and let's talk about where we are. This is, of course, President Obama's greatest failing from a foreign policy standpoint, which is he recognized the gravest threat that America and the world faced was a nuclear Iran, and he did not do what was necessary to get Iran to be dissuaded from their nuclear folly. What he should have done is speak out when dissidents took to the streets and say America is with you, and work on a covert basis to encourage the dissidents. Number two, he should have put in place crippling sanctions against Iran. But instead of getting Russia, for instance, to when he gave in our missile defense system to agree to stand with those crippling sanctions, he gave Russia what they wanted, their #1 foreign policy objective, and got nothing in return.
That's the time, Governor, on the question. We're going to adhere to time very quickly, but let me...
I get 60 seconds.
Yes, sir, and
that was 30.
The 60...
Sorry, it started at yellow, so I have much more time to go.
You know what, Governor? I stand corrected. Yeah. You are right. Please continue.
All right, thank you. Finally, the President should have built credible threat of military action and made it very clear that the United States of America is willing, in the final analysis, if necessary, to take military action to keep Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Look, one thing you can know, and that is if we re-elect Barack Obama, Iran will have a nuclear weapon. And if we elect Mitt Romney, if you elect me as the next president, they will not have a nuclear weapon.
But, sir, you just described where we are today, and that's what you're going to have to deal with if you become president. How do you prevent them from obtaining a nuclear weapon? Is it worth going to war to prevent that?
Well, it's worth putting in place crippling sanctions. It's worth working with the insurgents in the country to encourage regime change in the country. And if all else fails, if after all of the work we've done, there's nothing else we can do besides take military action, then of course you take military action. It is unacceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. We will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This term unacceptable has been applied by several presidents over history, and our current president has made it very clear that he's not willing to do those things necessary to get Iran to be dissuaded from their nuclear folly. I will take a different course. I will make sure that the sanctions, diplomatic pressure, economic pressure, and support of insurgents within the country help them become dissuaded to get away from their nuclear ambition.
This time it is time.
Yeah, and finally, have that military threat out there.
Governor Romney, a much smaller footprint in Afghanistan, do you support that? And secondarily, sir, is it time, or would it ever be time, for the United States to negotiate with the Taliban?
We don't negotiate with terrorists. I do not negotiate with the Taliban. That's something for the Afghans to decide how they're going to pursue their course in the future. With regards to our footprint in Afghanistan, the right course is for us to do our very best to secure the victories that have been so hard won by the soldiers, the men and women of our fighting forces who've been in Afghanistan. The commanders on the field feel that we can take out 30,000 to 40,000 troops sometime by the end of next year. The commander-in-chief, perhaps looking at the calendar of the election, decided to bring them home in September instead, in the middle of the fighting season. Our commander said that puts our troops at risk, at danger. Please don't pull them out there, they said. But he said, no, I'm going to get them out early. I think that was a mistake. Our surge troops should have been withdrawn by December of next year, not by September. And the timetable by the end of 2014 is the right timetable for us to be completely withdrawn from Afghanistan, other than a small footprint of support forces.
Governor Romney, recently President Obama ordered the death of an American citizen who was suspected of terrorist activity overseas. Is it appropriate for the American president, on the president's say-so alone, to order the death of an American citizen suspected of terrorism?
Absolutely. In this case, this is an individual who had aligned himself with a group that had declared war on the United States of America. And if there's someone that's going to join with a group like Al-Qaeda that declares war on America, and we're in a war with that entity, then of course anyone who is bearing arms with that entity is fair game for the United States of America. Let me go back. Let me go back and just talk for a moment about the issue that a number of people have spoken about, which is their definition of how their foreign policy might be different than this president. My foreign policy is pretty straightforward. I would be guided by an overwhelming conviction that this century must be an American century, where America has the strongest values, the strongest economy, and the strongest military. And an American century means a century where America leads the free world, and the free world leads the entire world. We have a president right now who thinks America is just another nation. America is an exceptional nation. We have a president who thinks that the way to conduct foreign policy is through his personal affects on other people. I believe the way to conduct foreign policy is with American strength. Everything I do will make America stronger, and I will stand and use whatever means necessary within the law to make sure that we protect America's citizens and Americans' rights.
And that's time, Governor. Governor Romney, I wonder, how would you manage China to avoid a 21st century Cold War?
Well, China has an interest in trade. China wants to, as they have 20 million people coming out of the farms and coming into the cities every year, they want to be able to put them to work. They want to have access to global markets. And so we have right now something they need very badly, which is access to our market, and our friends around the world have that same power over China. We need to make sure that we let them understand that in order for them to continue to have free and open access to the thing they want so badly, our markets, they have to play by the rules. They can't hack into our computer systems and steal from our government. They can't steal from corporations. They can't take patents and designs, intellectual property, and duplicate them and counterfeit them and sell them around the world. And they also can't manipulate their currency in such a way as to make their prices well below what they otherwise would be. We have to have China understand that, like everybody else on the world stage, they have to play by the rules. And if they do, we'll have open trade with them and work with them, and they should in every way want to collaborate with us and not become a belligerent nation economically or militarily. But if you just continue to sit back and let them run over us, the policies of Barack Obama in China have allowed China to continue to expand their entry into our computer systems, their entry, stealing our intellectual property, and of course their military capacity as well.
Governor, but I would like to ask you a follow-up on that point. You talk about all the things that China should be doing. How do you affect that as Commander-in-Chief? How do you make China do these things?
Well, number one on day one is acknowledging something which everyone knows. They're a currency manipulator. And on that basis, we also go before the WTO and bring an action against them as a currency manipulator, and that allows us to apply selectively tariffs where we believe they are stealing our intellectual property, hacking into our computers, or artificially lowering their prices and killing American jobs. We can't just sit back and let China run all over us. People say, well, you'll start a trade war. There's one going on right now, folks. They're stealing our jobs, and we're going to stand up to China.
Governor Romney, if I may ask you a 30-second follow-up to that, is it time for the Assad dictatorship to end? Would you use military force to do that?
Of course it's time for the Assad dictatorship to end, and we should use covert activity, as Speaker Gingrich has just indicated. Look, the reason I disagree with Ron Paul on this is that you have in Syria a nation which is an ally, the only Arab ally of Iran. It is arming Hezbollah. It represents an access of great significance to Iran, and as a result, because of our concern about Iran and their effort to become the hegemon in the Middle East, it is important for us as a nation to stand up and to help those efforts to replace Assad, and that means helping Turkey and Saudi Arabia, who are putting pressure on him, as well as covert activity of our own.
Governor, thank you very much.
Federal spending and debt are not only our greatest economic problems, they're our largest national security problem. Yet the President and the Congress continue to spend and borrow at record levels. Just adjusting the spending on existing federal programs will not solve the problem. What federal functions will you eliminate or return to the states in order to balance our budget?
Governor Romney, to you, sir.
Absolutely. Right now we're spending about 25% of the economy at the federal level, and that has to be brought down to a cap of 20%. I'll get that done within my first term if I'm lucky enough to get elected. How do you do that? One is eliminating programs. A lot of programs we like, but we simply can't afford. The first one we'll eliminate, however, we're happy to get rid of. That's Obamacare, and that'll save us $95 billion a year by my fourth year. Other programs we like, the Endowment for Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, public broadcasting. These are wonderful features that we have in the government, but we simply can't go out and borrow money from China to pay for them. They're not that essential. In terms of returning programs to the states, Medicaid, a program for the poor, should be returned to the states. Let the states manage it. And if we grow it at inflation plus 1%, we'll save $100 billion a year by returning that to the states. And finally, we have to make the federal government more productive. It is just way too overburdened with excessive personnel. I'll reduce the personnel by at least 10% and link the pay of federal employees with the pay in the private sector. We should not pay government workers more
Governor
than
Romney,
the people
that's
of
time.
America who are paying for them.
Governor Romney, would you send American troops across the border into Pakistan to clear out those safe havens? American men and women are coming under fire from those locations every single day.
The right way to deal with Pakistan is to recognize that Pakistan is not a country like other countries with a strong political center that you can go to and say, gee, can we come here? Will you take care of this problem? This is instead a nation which is close to being a failed state. I hope it doesn't reach that point, but it's a very fragile nation. It really has 4 centers of power: the ISI, which is their intelligence services, the military, separate group, you have the political structure, and of course the fundamentalists. And so we have to work with our friends in that country to get them to do some of the things we can't do ourselves. And bringing our troops into Pakistan and announcing at a stage like this that as president we would throw American troops into Pakistan could be highly incendiary in a setting like that. Right now, they're comfortable with our using drones to go after the people that are representing the greatest threat, and therefore I would continue to do that.
We have time, Governor, but are the Pakistanis comfortable with our using drones?
We have agreement with the people that we need to have agreement with to be able to use drones to strike at the people that represent a threat. And one of the things we have to do with our foreign aid commitments, the ongoing foreign aid commitments, I agree with Governor Perry. You start everything at zero. But one of the things we have to do is have understanding with the various power bases within the country that they're going to have to allow us, or they themselves, go after the Taliban and the Haqqani network to make sure they do not destabilize Afghanistan, particularly as we're pulling our troops out.